gentlemen, here, if I get the sound off, I have it off now, and we're off and running, if you will. So here we are. I'm going to have to move way over here to the side here.
Oh, sorry.
So that I'm not in the midst of or hidden behind the pictures. This is Family Hour for our Yahweh blog. This will be the 33rd episode of Qatsyr Harvest. We're still talking about Shabbat. Some people that would be listening, Kirk and Kevin, who are on my my right screen left here. If they listen to the 32nd episode, which played earlier today, where I did my best impression of Elia possible.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah.
I was impressed.
I thought there was some humor in it. And you'd say, what in the world are we talking about the Christian New Testament and the book of Acts, when the message is about Shabbat, which is 7 Shabbats, which, by the way, can't have much to do with Christianity since they ignore the Shabbat. And
and everything else.
Not about one of them. Yeah, everything else. Not one of them, but 7 of them. Yes, all of you. They also ignore the first 3 Moed Mikre, Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, and don't know that Yahweh actually says that Shabbat is a Bekurim harvest, which means without Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, there is no Shabbat harvest. Therefore, they can't be celebrating it because they ignored them. And even if they tried to have their wannabe God killed by the Jews and then resurrected by the other God, they don't even mention that he was supposed to be there for Passover. Not even a mention of the only reason that this would have occurred on that date. And they can't even reference the date having been Passover, much less anything happened on Passover. And then there's complete radio silence on matzah. It's like the day didn't even exist. And of course, Bekurim, which would have been a really handy thing if you wanted to have a birthday for your church, Bekurim would have been the one, but they didn't.
Where were you?
I guess I could have helped them out. I could have been their answer man and helped them out, but they missed on that one. So you might say, so why are we even doing this? Well, the reason we're doing it is that, well, first of all, Yahweh asked us to, and we have this we have this tendency to do what God wants us to do.
Biggest religion in the world.
Yeah, but the problem with Christianity is that it piled its trash right on top of the truth.
Yes,
and if they hadn't done that, then I wouldn't care. You could. I don't really care if you believe in mermaids, unicorns. I spend, Kevin, as you know, a lot of time over there on X, and I can tell you the majority of the world believes in unicorns and mermaids. So I really
I know what to draw next week.
Yeah, really. And if it weren't for the fact that the unicorns and mermaids are condemning Israel and want to perpetrate genocide on Israel and are trying to antagonize Russia into the Third World War, I wouldn't care. They could go ahead and do whatever they want to do.
Agreed.
So long as you pile your trash someplace else other than the truth, you can do whatever you want, and I'm not going to bother you, and nor is God. But that's not how these clowns operated. They not only piled their trash on the top of the truth, they engaged in identity theft. I don't even know if there was a word for identity theft back 2,000 years ago, but there should have been. They came up with a counterfeit bill that took from an American point of view, it rather than having George Washington on the bill, they decided to have the Easter Bunny. And rather than it being a greenback, the dadgone thing is bloody red. And it's got Egyptian pyramids, of course, on it and all that, and the Eye of Osiris and all of that sort of thing. They got that part right. But it is such a horrible counterfeit. And counterfeits are usually perceived to be meritorious, having value. They are accepted currency among the naive when 99.999% of the strokes and the paper are identical. Now, they're
Mhm.
still a criminal instrument, but they can be passed off if almost every stroke is identical. We've read through most of Acts 2 already as they tried to say that this was not only the birth of their church, but obviously this is the time to rob Dode of every one of his accolades and apply it to this mythical misnomer, Jesus Christ. We haven't found a single stroke that's accurate.
Yes.
And what they have now, 50 points they brought up, maybe 100 points,
Mm-hmm.
and they're 0 for 100. What's God's requirement? If you speak for Yahweh, what?
It's 100%.
Yeah,
You're quoting him. It's 100%.
100%. One mistake, and you're a fraud.
Yeah.
They didn't get one right.
Yeah. And my question to you was, what are the scholars and these people, these theologians? They've written all this. I'm looking at their work on one side of my page and yours on the other, and I'm going, what is it they? How dumb are they? Or are they all in on a take?
You know, what could it be unless it's the Jerry Falwell syndrome? When I met with him and pointed out that everything about Christianity was a complete fraud, and he said, yeah, okay, so yes, it is, but if I acknowledge this, the pews of my church would be empty. The donations that I receive in the collection plates wouldn't be there, and there wouldn't be checks arriving in the mail to support my university. And if you say it, they'll label you a kook. So it's sort of like the Roman Catholic Pope saying this fraud of Jesus has been very profitable to us. They obviously know it's true. I mean, they obviously know that it is a fraud and that the whole thing is true. And it's such a thin fraud. I've been using the term a lot, crude counterfeit, because it's a hatchet job. There is nothing here that would suggest to anyone who is playing with all of their oars on the water that any part of this is credible. And to fool billions of people with a religion this bogus, while not one person over that better part of 2,000 years listened to Yahweh and chose Yahweh over this stupidity, proves, well, Darwin was dead wrong. Humans
get better.
Have not evolved. I mean, I can tell you that Wookiee is smarter than any of these clowns. All right, so we're moving on, and it says here, this Ayusun.
Okay.
Now, if you're talking to Jews, Yehudim, in Yahudah in the 1st century CE, there is a possibility that some of them may have spoken Greek. It's clear that Peter could not have been speaking Greek because he employed Mark to be his translator, which is sort of funny because all the recipients of the Spirit were supposed to be able to babble in any language. So,
except Hebrew.
Why did Peter miss out? But nonetheless, how many Ayusuns would there have been in Judea in the 1st century?
None. Yeah. No Hebrew mother is naming her son.
Yeah, you couldn't find one. Right.
No,
correct.
It is a completely bogus name. And let's just pretend that they meant to give him a different name. Well, then give him a different name. They didn't do it.
Yeah, that changed.
They gave it Iusu, Iusus, and Iusun with Greek grammar rules, and they did not name him, which is the only name of the Messiah, Dode.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote DD, which I guess was supposed to be for Dode, but they never came up with a name that's a Hebrew name. And You'd think that would be the prerequisite. If you're going to pull off a fraud and you're going to have a counterfeit bill, and you're going to like take English, are you going to call the president on it, Osama bin Laden?
Or the first thing you said in the book originally was you translate words, you transliterate names.
Mhm.
Obama's name in Swahili is Obama.
That
and
is
nobody
correct.
argues with that. Yeah.
That is correct. And so these clowns obviously were not smart enough to know that. So this Iusun, so there was no Iusun, whom Theos, no, you can refer to Yahweh by the title El. You can translate it, but the fact of the matter is, if you're speaking for Yahweh, you have to use his name.
Yes, sir.
And if you don't use his name, you're not speaking for God. So they're automatically disqualified by
the Dabbling
not,
test, yeah.
Yeah, by not using Yahweh's name. And so you've got two bogus names, so they're 0 for 2, and which would be the first two words. Iusun Theos, raised up. How? It says anitasamai, raised up, stood upright. Are they trying to say that the God that the Jews killed stood up again? Because if that's what they're saying, then the Romans are really crappy at crucifixion.
Killing, yeah.
And if that's true, then he couldn't have fulfilled the unmentioned Passover, because the Passover lamb doesn't come back for a repeat performance.
Turned up.
So we're 0 for 3, which all of us exist as witnesses. No,
nobody.
And first, if there were witnesses, they would have known that it was Dode. Dode explained what he was going to do, said when he was going to do it, and then he did it. So if there were witnesses, they would have seen Dode. We don't even have any indication that Ptah was there.
Right.
Even in the mythology. We know that Luke, who wrote this, wasn't there.
Yes.
Paul, who wrote the first 14 books of the Christian New Testament, he wasn't there. And to speak to a group of people and say that they were all witnesses is absolutely insane. And as I pointed out, there isn't any record anywhere in the world that was written contemporaneous with these events by anyone who was a witness to them. Nowhere in the world. Even if you look at, this was written by Luke. Mm-hmm. Was not in Jerusalem at any time that we know of, and certainly wasn't there within 10 or 15 years of the time that this took place. So he's not a witness.
He's gone. Yeah.
We know that Mark was not there at this time, and he wrote a gospel. So that would make his gospel hearsay, would make Luke's gospel hearsay. And we know Matthew was written by some person whose name we do not actually know in around 95 CE, which is
substantially
60 years after the fact. He was not a witness. So who are the witnesses? Even the book, you might say, okay, the book of John. Well, the problem with the book of John, we don't have who wrote it. It's attributed to this fellow that was supposedly a disciple, but it was written. It was written in Ephesus, is the best guess, somewhere around 95 CE, at which time the said disciple would have been 85 years old. People just didn't live that long at that time. And why would he write his recollections of what was supposedly said 60 years later?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm old enough to know that that I can go back 60 years, and I can talk about what happened in my life as a 10-year-old, and yet I can't remember a single conversation.
Mm.
Can you? Can you? I mean, you guys probably aren't as old as I am, but
I'm older.
you're older. Okay, so imagine going back 60 years and pretending that you're going to replicate a conversation word for word as it took place, or even just remember a conversation.
Yeah. No.
No.
When they were chasing me. Oh,
Yeah. I mean, I have
but
some.
no.
It's just the whole thing is ludicrous.
Yeah.
So it exists as witnesses. Therefore, so when you see a therefore following Iousus is a soon as a lie. Theos is does not speak of Yahweh. Raised up does not pertain to anything that could have happened pursuant to Passover.
Mhm.
Exist as witnesses is untrue, and now you want to have a therefore. So a therefore that follows four lies is therefore
It is
a lie.
Therefore, we're done.
Yeah.
Hell, y'all don't have to keep up with you.
Yeah. You know, I gave my wife a bed of rose petals. I doused it with the finest perfume.
Wow,
I filled
romantic.
glasses of champagne for her and played the most beautiful sonnet on the violin for her. Therefore, I should get breakfast in bed tomorrow.
None of that's going to happen, huh?
No,
You're a married man, aren't you?
yeah, there we go. Therefore is the right hand of Theos lifted up and exalted. Okay, somebody ought to have taught these boys logic.
Hmm.
He also promised. Oh, so we're just passing by that because, by the way, Yahweh does have a right hand. His name is Dod.
Uh-huh.
And there are times when Yahweh will speak of others. He does both of the other Zeroas as his right hand. And there are individuals from time to time that Yahweh takes great pride in. And I think pride is probably a proper term. Yah was proud of what Moshe did. He's proud of what Dod did. He's proud of Yashayah. He's proud of Eliah. And so these people will be lifted up and exalted. But how many times have you read that Jesus was the right hand of Theos and he was lifted up and exalted?
Not in any Torah I've seen. Yeah.
No, not in the books I read.
Yeah, not anywhere in the Torah and prophets or Psalms. Never once. So we just have another lie. And this lie is dangerous because there are people that this pertains to. For example, the right hand of God is Dod, so they're ripping off an accolade that belongs to Dod, and it is Dod who is lifted up and exalted. A double ripoff. Also, he also promised. Who also promised? Is this the Theos? And you know how many gods there were in among the Romans?
Oh gosh, the Pantheon is full of them.
Yeah. Why do you think they called the building the Pantheon? Pan means all, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Theon is Theos, so all gods. So if you're talking about a Theos and the Theos is unidentified, then you might as well be saying, I'm speaking here from Zeus or Jupiter or Amen Ra. You take your pick.
Yeah.
So whoever he is, promised the holy, the Hagion Pneuma. Yeah. Hagion Pneuma, who is received and acquired from the Pater, I assumed meaning Father, which you all have also seen and heard. Okay, so
Yeah.
What does the word holy mean in Hebrew? Do you guys know?
It's from Choli. It's a bad thing. It's evil or sick or something. It's not
Sick,
not
yeah,
fun.
sick and diseased.
Yeah.
Holy in Hebrew is an illness. So this would be a really sick spirit. That's probably a bad thing. There is a spirit of Yahweh, and the spirit of Yahweh is occasionally called
Ruach Kodesh.
Ruach Kodesh, and the fact that that the spirit is occasionally called Ruach Kodesh is sort of like so many other things that, for example, Dode is called Kodesh by Yahweh. The Torah is called Kodesh. The covenant is called Kodesh. Yahweh's name is Kodesh. Yisrael is Kodesh. Many things unto Yahweh are Kodesh. The mikre of matzah, chag matzah, is Kodesh. Lots of things. Jerusalem is Kodesh.
Yes.
Lots of things to Yahweh are Kodesh. Nothing with Yahweh is holy. And again, if you're going to presume that there is a spirit that is being somehow received, we know that Yahweh, and we don't actually know this from the Torah, we actually know it from Yashayah, speaks of the fact that Dode was, or not Dode, but Moshe was afforded the spirit, the Ruach of Yahweh. We know that Dode received the spirit of Yahweh the moment that he was anointed as the Messiah, and we're told the spirit of Yahweh never left him. The spirit, by the way, wasn't designated in either of those times as set apart, Kodesh, much less holy. But in terms of an individual who can bear the title Messiah, perverted into Christianity as Christ, there is one person who we are told specifically that the spirit came upon him. It's recorded in Samuel.
Yes.
And that individual would be
Dode.
Is there any indication that a holy pneuma was received and acquired from the pater, which you all have also seen?
No.
Only Shaul got that. Only Saul,
Yeah.
King Saul got that.
Yeah, Saul.
He got a spirit, didn't he? Yeah, that's right. Very good.
Both the Saul of
And Muhammad.
the enemy of Dode, and Shaul, the author of the Christian New Testament, both admitted that they were demon possessed.
Wow.
But here's a problem with all of this.
Okay.
There is a Ruach of Yahweh. They were in a Hebrew environment, Jerusalem, claiming to be Hebrews, speaking to Hebrews, and also this filled with this spirit, which is they claim on this day, and yet they can't say Ruach, can't say Ruach Kodesh, can't say Yahweh. And they're supposed to be able to speak every language. That's the big miracle of this day, and they can't replicate Yahweh's name.
Yeah.
They can't replicate Ruach Kodesh. And they said from the pater, as in what this is the Pope, which in fact I'm not even sure there's any place where the Ruach of Yahweh is acquired from the Father. I mean, Yahweh is the Father of the covenant, but when Yahweh dispatches the Spirit, it's the Spirit of Yahweh. You look at the Choder. The first of the 7 spirits that are afforded to the Choder is the spirit of Yahweh. He never once said it's the spirit of the Father.
Yeah.
All right. Then you go to what you all have seen and heard. Have you guys ever seen a spirit?
Thankfully, no.
No. I've got 7 that's supposed to be, that we're told reside within me. And I have, according to Dode and the 91st Mizmor, there's 1,000 surrounding me that are doing their job, which is to make it possible for me to convey this message without having people follow through on their desire to kill me. I've never seen one of them. I've seen the results. Boy, you look at hurricanes that come here, and we'll have a hurricane that's coming right at us, and another one immediately following, and one will dip down north, and one will go to the south, and here we are. We'd had a Cat 5 in Dorian that came within 40 miles of Fort Lauderdale, where I had my boat and house, and it stalled, and then went. Just
turn right angles. They don't turn right angles.
So we see the result. I know I've had thousands of death threats and never had to duck. So I've seen the results, but you don't see a spirit. They're invisible. So for him to write, whom you have seen and heard, if you've heard a spirit, I'm telling you, you want to run. That is not a good thing. No, They got, so once again, every single statement they made was wrong. There was no one named Ayusun in the 1st century Judea. The person being crudely counterfeited is Dode. God has a name, but these shysters obviously did not know it. The body of the Passover lamb was bludgeoned, discarded, and incinerated. It did not rise. The Pesach Kael never comes back to life, as that would be ridiculous and would defeat its purpose. No one in this alleged audience was a witness to a risen Ayusun, much less a crucified Ayusun. In fact, no one in this audience had ever seen an Ayusun.
That's correct.
I mean, that's like saying, I saw the Easter Bunny. I really did. And he was hanging out with the Tooth Fairy. Yeah, and Satan Claus was giving them
not far behind.
Not far behind. Yeah. Fact is, those allegedly exposed to the handful of brief post-Bikurim sightings of pretend gospel Jesus shared one thing in common. What was the one thing? If you read everyone, if you just take their myths for a moment, as if they had one chance in a billion of being true. There is a common denominator amongst all of the mythical reports about gospel Jesus in the immediate aftermath of what would have been Bikurim if they knew what it was. What is the common denominator?
You mean they claimed he was risen? Pardon? They ran around saying?
No,
his own mother didn't recognize him. His own mother didn't recognize him.
No one recognized him.
Nobody knew who he was.
Right. Nobody recognized him.
Yeah.
Even the guys on the road to Emmaus were clueless. The women in his life were clueless. Nobody recognized. He allegedly goes into the upper room, and the guys are there, shuddering. And he walks through the wall, which would mean he doesn't have a body, by the way. So that kind of messed that thing up. And no one recognizes him. And so the one common denominator is no one recognizes him. And if no one recognizes them, then how can this line be true? Therefore, we all exist as witnesses.
Wow. What's that, 12?
Well, in one statement. Oh my! These guys would have. I don't think would have defended themselves with Perry Mason and F. Lee Bailey. Further, Dode, as the right hand of God, was ignored. He was disregarded. He was demeaned. He was rejected and replaced, which is the antithesis of being lifted up and exalted. I can tell you for certain, fellas, that over the last 2,000 years, prior to us figuring it out a few years ago, there was not a single person who recognized that Dode had volunteered to serve as the Passover lamb to fulfill matzah and Bikurim, and that he had acknowledged all of this as a first-person witness, and yet not a single person acknowledged it. That is our role, to reintroduce God's people to the truth. But before we do that, we have to excoriate the pile of lies that have been piled on top of the truth, because under that pile of lies, Jews just aren't going to tread. So we have to demonstrate to them that there was no Jesus by any name, and that the character that the myth was trying to replicate is actually the Messiah, David, who is the Son of God, which is something the Jews can't even accept. They got so disgusted by the pretense of this Jesus being the Son of God that rabbinical Judaism is based in part on the fact that it's interspecies, and therefore God can't have G-D can't have a son. That would be interspecies. So
let's tell God what He can and cannot do, right?
Well, of course they want to do that, but just for fun, the one who conceives you is considered your parent, correct?
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
Who conceived humankind?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When Yahweh said, "I made them in my image," what do you think that means?
Means He made him in His image. We are like Him.
Okay. When Yahweh refers to Himself as our Father, what do you think he's trying to convey?
Yeah.
That maybe He's our Father. When Yahweh establishes the single most important thing to Him, which is the covenant family, what role do you think He might want to play in that family?
He's dead.
When the person that He established the covenant with was named Abraham, and Ab means father, what do you think He's trying to convey?
Yeah.
When Yahweh said that Dod is my Bakur, firstborn,
my child.
Perhaps, how would you explain firstborn apart from a father-son relationship?
Mm-hmm.
When Yahweh says 3 times, "I am his father, he is my son," do you think that God has no concept of what the father-son relationship means?
I think you get it right 3 times.
Is the religious God that stupid? Evidently.
Yeah.
Apparently, yeah.
So anyway, because the rabbis have declared that God can't have a son, because they're all up in a tizzy fit, they got their panties up in a twat over this. We are left to try to rid the world of 2 lies: the Christian lie and the rabbinical lie, so that the truth can be known. That Yahweh has announced that not only is Dod his firstborn son, but that Dod fulfilled Bakurim, which means firstborn
children. Yeah,
children.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more to the story. What did, by the way, Yahweh refer to his irascible gaggle that he was, this flock that he was leading out of Mitzrayim? How did he refer to them?
Children of Yisrael.
Oh, that's it. Bnei Yisrael.
Bnei Yisrael.
So I guess that they can't be the children of Yisrael either, right? So here we go. The Dod, as we say, is the right hand of God. God told us that at least a half a dozen times. And that the Messiah was not promised, by the way, the Holy Spirit. The Ruach Kodesh, set apart spirit of Yahweh, and it wasn't even identified as the Kodesh, just the Ruach of Yahweh, came upon Dod when he was anointed HaMashiach at 8 years of age. And we are told explicitly that the Spirit never left him. And what that actually means, and this is sort of interesting, because every time I say that, and that's what the statement reads from Yahweh, what it means is that when Yahweh tells us that He provided a shield for Dod's nefesh, when Dod's nefesh carried our guilt into Sheol, which is a place of great pressure, a lightless prison. What that means is that the shield would have been comprised of the Spirit.
Right.
And that means that the Spirit of Yahweh can be set apart from Him to the extent that it virtually ceases its association with Him. Right. Because Yahweh can't go to the place of separation from Yahweh.
Understood.
So what that does, and if you look at during Dod's life, Dod and both Moshe also made a lot of mistakes. And Yahweh can't be associated with the slime in our lives. So when Yahweh dispatches the Ruach Kodesh, the set-apart spirit, that spirit has to be separated from him.
Wow.
Yes, to perform in that way. And that also means that the spirit was separated from Yahweh to go to the place of separation to serve as the shield for Dode. And it sort of makes a mess out of the mommy God cult, where the Ruach is spirit mom, doesn't it? With a separate with a separate dialogue, a separate narrative, a separate personality, and all those sorts of things. The spirit of Yahweh is an implement.
Yeah.
And obviously there's more than one, because Yahweh was not deprived of being a spiritual being, and he gave his choder 7.
Mm-hmm.
And even says the spirit of Yahweh is one of them. So Yahweh can dispatch aspects of his spirit without depriving himself of anything.
Right. And at multiple times throughout time, because if the Ruach, the set apart, never leads Dode, then how do you have that as a first as a choder, right? You know,
that's correct.
They have to have them at the same. Yeah. So
That's
it's a piece of it.
Correct.
Wow.
Right. And that's why this notion of making the spirit one doesn't work, not only because of Dode and myself as Dode's herald, but the fact that in Yeshaya 11, there's 7 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the Yahweh matters. Yahweh is the creator God of the universe. That is, the creator God of the universe's one and only name. He wants to relate to us as an Ab, Father, and he operates under the title El, God, and he does have both a nefesh, soul, and a ruach, spirit. But the ruach, spirit, and the nefesh, soul are available for deployment. Now, for example, when Yahweh decided that he wanted to break bread with Abraham, and at one time they even had a cheeseburger, which we just got to really drive the rabbis crazy. But when they were doing this, do you think that that the entirety of God was down there eating the cheeseburger?
No, never did.
He sent
a
nefesh, soul, to convey his personality. He used a physical body that he could conceive, since he conceived the whole universe, and it was essentially an avatar that it existed within. So we make way too big a deal, I think, out of Ruach, in the sense of representing the totality of God. You know, the Christians want God to be in 3 persons: Son, Father, and Mother Spirit, and it's just not that way. Yahweh is God; He is one, and the Ruach is an implement that God can use, just as He can use His nefesh. And Yahweh has lots of implements. He speaks of His right hand, His influence, a lot. The words are implements that Yahweh uses, and there's people that He uses as implements. Anyway, the set-apart spirit we know came upon Dode. There is no indication that a set-apart spirit is fond of myths, and so, in fact, we don't even have an example in the Christian New Testament of the set-apart spirit ever arriving vis-a-vis Agibus. And let's just say that that we want to say that, okay, in the Jordan River, where you had the John the Baptist. First of all, you'd have to get past the notion that there was no person was called a Baptist. There were no baptizers. There were no Baptists.
Or Baptist.
None. The whole concept
of
baptizing is from the Sibylline oracles, which was the religion of the Roman Senate. And so there were no baptizers of any kind, so you couldn't have had a John the Baptist. And and we're told that the Spirit came on him in the form of a dove, and the Spirit again is invisible. The Spirit is not a bird. Doves are pretty crappy birds, by the way. They're really mean spirited. If you've ever seen doves operate, and
Yeah.
the dove might have been able to peck at him or shit on him, but dove can't come inside of him, and a dove's a bird brain. So a dove's a bird brain. So the dove isn't going to make him smarter. And oh, by the way, if the Spirit of came upon him at 30 years old, what in the hell was happening in the first 30 years? How could it be the birth of baby Jesus if he didn't have a Spirit?
Wow. Like the way you think.
Yeah, so here we go. Okay, then by claiming that the Patar is the source of the Hagion Pneuma, Peter, which is a name that is just crazy in it by itself. I mean,
Yeah.
The man's name, if you want to believe the Christian New Testament, was Shimon. And there is the episode that Eusebius wrote, and this is one of the real problems with the Christian New Testament, because it's Eusebius that wrote this whole notion of you are the rock upon which I will build my church. That was written in the 4th century.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only justification for calling said dude Peter, which is a transliteration of Petra, the Greek word for rock, which would not have been spoken by the myth of Jesus, because he would have spoken Hebrew, and Kefesh is the Hebrew word for rock, but it's not even a very good word for rock. It's more like airhead than it is rock. It'd be a holy rock if we're going that direction. So there could not have been a Peter, and there could not have been a Petra. The Ruach Kodesh is an implement that Yahweh uses to project either an aspect of his nature or to assist someone to accomplish a mission. In terms of the 7 spirits, the first of them for the Choders, the Spirit of Yahweh. And why would you assume that Yahweh would provide the Spirit of Yahweh? If you're God and none of your people acknowledge who you are, they've erased your name, why would you begin with the Spirit of Yahweh? Maybe to refamiliarize your people with the fact that your name is Yahweh?
Right.
And that's the first of the 7 spirits. They didn't get that part here. And then it goes on from there. The second is the Spirit of Chokmah. Remember the whole Spirit Mom cult that wanted to turn Chokmah into Mommy God? And the 8th Mizmor? Well, the Choder is the one who received the Spirit of Chokmah. All Chokmah means is that you're given the ability to think, to reason, to explore information, determine what is and is not viable, and then how to make the proper connections so that you can enjoy the next spirit, which is the Spirit of Binah, which is the spirit of understanding, making proper associations to understand. And then the next spirit is the spirit of being able to see the entire picture from beginning to end, from the Gan Eden back to the garden, and then you go from there to the spirit of Gabora, which is to be bold, to be empowered, to be enriched, to be competent, courageous. I don't see any of that here.
No.
So the set apart spirit is a tool that Yahweh has in his arsenal to project his influence. The Greek hagazo, so it's hagazo, which is typically rendered as holy, denotes religious implications. In addition to the Holy Ghost, Christianity sports a holy Catholic Church, a holy Bible, a holy Father, and a holy See, even a holy Mother and a holy One, in addition to a Holy Trinity and holy water and holy baptism and holy grail. Well, of course, there's also holy communication. There's even a holy of holies.
Wow.
Not to be outdone, there's a holy war.
And the Holy Land.
Yeah. So just because Yahweh's got a bunch of set aparts, Christians are not going to be outdone. But if I'm looking down this list, I would like you to tell me how many of these holies have a match in terms of a set apart aspect of Yahweh's agenda. Holy Ghost, Holy Catholic Church, Holy Bible, Holy Father, Holy See, Holy Mother, Holy One, Holy Trinity, Holy Water, Holy Baptism, and Holy Grail, in addition to Holy Communion and Holy of Holies.
I can't find nothing.
Yeah, I'm over the whole list too. We even celebrate Halloween, which is the All Spirits Day. The New World Encyclopedia says the word holy denotes the presence of sacredness in an object, being, person, place, or idea. Holy war. It can also indicate an experience of numinosity, all inspiring and imbued with sacredness. I don't know.
Holy moly.
I've spent a lot. Yeah, holy moly. I spent a lot of time translating the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. I'm not sure I've ever come across a sacredness or a numinosity for that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I thought I had a pretty good vocabulary.
I got to tell you. Sylvia told me this when she said he went to a Catholic funeral, and the guy next to her, or somebody next to her, said, and he's saying, in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the Holy Ghost.
In the Holy Ghost.
No, in the Holy Ghost.
In the Holy
Ghost. Oh, in the Holy Ghost. Okay.
Okay. So there you go.
So it's an all-inspiring and imbued, well, is the second imbued, with sacredness. It is often ascribed to saints. Can you tell me how many saints Yahweh has?
Can't find one.
Pardon? You can't find one?
No.
What kind of co-host are you?
I'm lousy, obviously.
You know, they actually have. You know what they have after saints? This is the New World Encyclopedia. Gurus.
Oh,
Gurus.
Gurus? Really?
Holy gurus. Holy times or holy places. Thomas Aquinas defined holiness as a virtue by which man's mind applies itself to all its acts to God. So man's mind applies itself and all its acts to God. Then why, if that's true, couldn't any one of these numbskulls, being holy, figure out that the Christian New Testament is a holy mess?
They'll send their money in. And
the origin of the word holy comes from the 11th century Old German Hulis. That's convenient since the word church comes from the Old German. True, it's from church, the pagan goddess. The Old English holigen, meaning holly, as in the holly tree, is considered a sacred plant to pre-Christian Celtics and Roman worship. Yeah, the holly was considered sacred. To Yahweh, no, but to the pagans, absolutely. So why not bother? Holly Christmas. And to hold holly became to be holy. And then to make holy is to sanctify. There's a little bit of circular reasoning there. The concept of being set apart is as central to the covenant as religious notions like holy are opposed to it. At best, holy conceals and corrupts this message, and it replaces God's terminology with man's. Worse, it applies attributes to saints, objects, relics, gurus, and the Spirit, which are completely inaccurate. I think it's not fair to pick on gurus. They need a break. But the story gets darker because holy turns out has a satanic past. Who would have thought? According, just because it means diseased and plagued in Hebrew, what was your first
Yeah.
clue? According to the Oxford English Dictionary, I wonder if there's any Englishmen left in Oxford, or if it is entirely Muslim today. Anyway, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, holy was originally used to venerate heathen deities in the Old Norse religion. That's not good. In the
No.
Dictionary of Mythology, Folklore, and Symbols, holy in practically all languages was derived from the divinely honored sun.
Sun God.
Yeah, and we're not talking about S-O-N here. This is the S-U-N, the sun god, which is, of course, the basis of the Christian Jesus and the Lord. That's why they have their halos. That's why their baby god is born on the winter's solstice. That's why his holy day is in the vernal equinox. It is why virtually everything associated with, for example, the Constantine's in front of this sign, Conquer, was a superimposed cross in front of the sun, and Constantine, to his deathbed, continued to worship
the sun.
Mithra, which is the unconquerable sun.
Mm-hmm.
Forlong's Encyclopedia of Religion says holy is the great Hindu spring festival held in honor of Krishna as the spring sun god and a personified woman called Holy. I am not an expert in Krishna, Holy, Harry, or otherwise, so I can't really tell you. Heli, which is the German pronunciation of holy, means sun's ray, and halo, combining the religious and scientific symbols for the sun god and man. It is then little wonder that the religious types are wont to place these pagan images over the heads of their saints as halos. As confirmation of this, J.C. Cooper, in his Illustrated Encyclopedia of Traditional Symbols, writes, nimbus. A nimbus is a halo around a saint's head, replete with a sunburst. Halo and aureole, a heavenly crown of radiant light, or corona worn by the saints, were originally indicative of solar power and of the sun's disk, and hence display an attribute associated with sun gods. This is not much of an endorsement, is it?
No.
Since so many of man's religious words, such as church, which is an adaptation of church, pronounced similarly to church, representing the sun goddess who was the daughter of Helios, the sun, of course, came from Germanic sources, and it is instructive to know that Heli and Helig, very similar, by the way, to Heil. I don't want to do that symbol because somebody, all the progressive libertards will say, you must be a Nazi. Actually, I wrote an article the other day on calling people Nazis. And we all know my friend Joe Page. He was the first to tell me this. He says, I always judge who's losing the argument. The first person to resort to the F-bomb or a Nazi reference has lost the argument. They want to claim that everybody is a Nazi.
Of course.
Of course. Yeah. Except the Muslims, who are the most akin to Nazis.
It might as well.
So it is the German equivalent of Hail, and of course we have Hail Hitler. Heil Hitler. The Bell's new pantheon says that Heil is a Saxon, a Prussian, and North Germanic idol. So it is safe to say that at best, holy is wrong, and that it misses the point of set apart and special, and at worst, holy leads us in an entirely errant direction. The closest word, holy, it's actually, there is it's actually the hard CH sound, so it's holy, but it means severe plague and chronic sickness. As a Jew fluent in Hebrew, Peter should have known better. even if Luke didn't. Peter would have us believe that the beloved Son of God, the Messiah, the past and future King of Israel, Yahweh's firstborn and chosen one, his shepherd and the branch, the great prophet and psalmist, I don't know how many of his accolades I missed there, but probably a couple of hundred, did not get into heaven. Nope, he was dead and buried. So if the doors are forever sealed for DD, well, we might as well all just give up because our God is a complete inept fraud. Anyway, the next, this is Acts 2:35. For Dode, actually, I can't say that. For DD, it's a placeholder. And typically, placeholders are only used for divine symbols.
Mhm.
So they're actually saying here that DD was divine. For DD did not ascend to heaven. Boy, I bet that's news to Dode. Yeah, he did not ascend to heaven. No. In fact, even reading this, it's hard for me not to. I mean, I have a sense of humor. You can tell because I've well, you guys are hiding it. Normally, Kirk,
Yeah, it's not
your image
funny.
happens to be over my my Dode with the sunglasses and the bubble gum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I've got no problem with a good joke, but I'm really, even Dode tells us over and over again, I'm going to fall asleep, but I'm going to wake up, and this is what we're going to go do. And so no, I can assure you that DD and Dode are definitely in heaven. But himself said, so why are we quoting him if he's not in heaven?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
I want somebody that knows how to get there. If we're going to,
if I'm going to listen to somebody, boy, brilliant.
Good point.
I want to listen to somebody who knows how to get there. So he's not in heaven, but nonetheless, we should listen to him. He said, Lord, my Lord, sits and resides out of my right side. Lord, my Lord, resides and sits out of my right side.
Who is?
I got a pretty good relationship with Yahweh. Really good relationship with Dode. I have never seen a Lord come out of my right side.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I'll bet you that we'll check this passage and we'll find rather than two mentions of a Lord said Lord, my Lord, that we'll find zero mentions of Lord.
mm-hmm.
Said Lord, my Lord, sits and resides out of my right side until I put your enemies as a footstool for your feet. So my Lord sits and resides at my right side. So this would be Dode saying this of whom? Does Dode have a Lord?
No.
No. So we don't know who Dode is saying this to, but nonetheless, he's saying that somebody is sitting at his right side, and he's the Lord of Lords, I guess. And he's going to stay there until his enemies become a footstool. Now, there is a statement where the Yahweh refers to making your enemies a footstool, but he says it of Dode.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say it of Jesus. And what do they call it? Ganglia, when you have growths that come out of your head, the monsters with the two-headed monsters. Are they called ganglia?
Sounds familiar.
I think so. It sounds like we have an episode of Ganglia here. The initial declaration that David did not ascend to heaven is so far from the truth, it's insulting, of course, to Yahweh. It's demeaning to his beloved son. So negating of the entire purpose of the covenant. And by the way, Dode fulfilled Bekurim, where he specifically says that he returned to the Father. So if he was a prophet, he had to be a false prophet because he wrote that. So why would you quote him if he's a false prophet?
There you go with that logic.
Sorry. And so dismissive of the Moed Mikre, particularly Bekurim, which I guess they can be dismissive of because they dismissed it. Stating it publicly, Peter, Luke, and the spiritual advisor, Paul, have earned their incarceration in Sheol hell. And from this junction into oblivion, the church has opined that the Lord, speaking of my Lord, proves that there are multiple persons of the Godhead. Yeah, that's what they actually claim here, because this is, of course, just nonsense. They had to come up with some excuse. Why would you say, Lord, my Lord? Because it's nonsense. Well, they came up with a way to make sense of nonsense. And that is that this proves there's a Trinity.
At least.
How? Well, first of all, it would be a twinity, not a. It wouldn't be three. There'd be two. It would be a duality.
A duet. A duet.
A duet. And that the unnamed Lord must be Jeebus, must be in heaven, I guess, instead of Dode. Evil as demonic says. Just for our entertainment, I would like to ask those promoting these lies. First of all, they were bothered to read them and think. But beyond that, if we were to suppose that Dode is speaking in first person in this psalm, who is it that is saying, until I put your enemies as a footstool for your feet? Who would that be?
Yeah,
Who is it first person if Dode is supposed to be the one speaking in this psalm? Would be Dode, since he's speaking in first person, right?
Yeah.
So is Dode putting the enemies at the Lord's feet? Okay. With Dode as the speaker rather than the subject of the psalm, wouldn't that make Dode more powerful than the Lord? He's the actor. He's the one that's putting the enemies at the footstool.
That's correct.
So tell me, how is it that the full cadre of Christian theologians over the vast chasm of time have not been able to admit that the conclusion of the sentence negates any possibility that it was spoken by David, D.D., or by Jebus? Iusus, Iusun, I don't know. Are they all complete ignoramuses? That's a technical term for this kind of thing. Or is the problem a total lack of integrity?
The latter. Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, I think probably both.
Yeah.
We have more copies, by the way, of the Psalms extant among the Dead Sea Scrolls than any other divinely inspired text. More scrolls than even of the Torah or of the great prophet Yeshaya, Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the citation now being misappropriated is from Psalm 110, and it is not among them. At issue is the use of Adonai, my Lord or my Master, after and before Yahweh's name, in addition to the realization that the entire psalm was written in Yahweh's voice. That would sort of undermine the entire claim, wouldn't it?
Yes.
How could Dode have said this if the entire psalm is in Yahweh's voice?
Yeah. And then
Might have wanted to think that one through. In fact, God addresses his subject in second and third person. This is to say that Yahweh is speaking to this individual and then of him, which is exactly what we witnessed in 2 Samuel 7.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this known, the psalm was written about Dode, not by Dode. That would mean it's very similar to the 89th psalm. Mizmor, therefore, the introductory line in Acts 2, but he himself said, well, that's false, since the psalm was about Dode and was spoken by Yahweh. And since almost every statement is consistent with what Yahweh has said of him and to no one else, it can't pertain to anyone else. So let's look at it. We're good at that. We've passed the first hour mark, but this really isn't family hour anyway. It's family, whatever, hour and a half.
It's the 2 hour family hour.
Okay, so we get a double bonus.
Yes.
Back to that duality
Bonus
thing.
round.
We're
Yeah,
learning all about time.
Yeah,
We're going to be timeless, so we're learning all
back
about
to-
time now.
back
You
to the
got it.
duality of God.
Uh-huh.
A psalm, a mizmor, regarding Dode. And law can be translated as regarding, to, concerning, or even the approach of. It is a preposition that speaks of drawing near and approaching. So a psalm about approaching Dode, about Dode's approach, about regarding Dode, any one of those are your options, including a psalm to Dode.
Yeah, that's
But
approaching it.
no matter what you choose here, it fails the Christian's supposition. So using the primary meaning of the preposition la, to, the mystery of the psalm is resolved. It was not Dode. It is not Dode himself who is saying anything, but is instead what Yahweh is saying about Dode based upon the Masoretic text. The Mizmor reads, Yahweh, a transliteration of God's name as his Torah dictates about his high existence, prophetically announced in advance of it occurring, Nahum, concerning the approach of my Lord and my upright one. You have chosen of your own accord to actually dwell at my right side as my right hand and as an eternal witness to the restoring testimony. Now, we'll continue in a moment, but I was translating just before the show began. Yahweh is in Malachi, in the 3rd chapter of Malachi. That's the final of the prophets. And Yahweh is speaking of dispatching a malach. And this malach is his messenger. And Eve actually calls this malach the malach of the bereth. He is the messenger of the covenant. And he goes on and on to say that then this messenger of the covenant is going to be met by another, and that they will have this responsibility of reintroducing Yisrael to my name and to what they need to know to re-engage in this relationship. So now you've got two of them. And of course, we don't have to look very far. You look at the previous prophet, that would be Zechariah in the opening chapters, and he says there are two witnesses, and Malachi will finish this chapter saying that one of the two witnesses is Eliah. Okay. So what I'm getting at here is that as Yahweh continues to describe these two, he says that Eliah is going to be a really good yabberer. He is the man with the gift of gab. He can orate with the best of them. And he says that other fellow who is the malach of the bereth, well, he's going to be really systematic, and he's going to write the entire story down in a collection of books. And that this will be the difference between the two of them. One is a really good speaker, and the other one's a pretty comprehensive writer. And then he continues to distinguish the two of them, and he talks favorably about both of them. But he speaks of Eliah. This is why I'm bringing up this point here. He speaks of Eliah as being a Edom, an upright one. So Eliah is the Edom. He does have a really nice accolade for Yada, but it's irrelevant other than to say, in that context, he's addressing the upright one. And it's important to recognize Eliah as the upright one, because he was the one guy that publicly looked the king and the queen of Israel and 850 prophets of the Queen of Heaven, Mother of God, and the Lord in the eye, and not only bested them, but mocked them.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, when it comes to being a stand-up guy, Eliah is the stand-up guy. And so with the replica of the tent of the restoring witness being placed on the Temple Mount, Elia is clearly the upright pillar holding up that tent. He is the most upright, stand up for God guy that there ever was. And actually, it's kind of interesting too. It says that he's the one that the people have sought after, have expected and sought after, and he falls all of that. So if God's consistent, which he usually is, this and the 110th Mizmor, when he's speaking of it and concerning Dode, the upright one is the Edom, is Elia. And Elia is really important because Elia is one of the two that comes back to enlighten his people. And Yah was also fairly direct here. He says that the difference between the fellow that writes a lot of books and is really systematic in his writing and the fellow that is the really good talker is that the really good talker is talking to his people. Elia is a Israelite. So I think that's what he's speaking of here, just by making that connection. And I just think that's the likelihood. So Yahweh prophetically announced in advance of it occurring, including the approach of my upright one. You have chosen of your own accord to actually dwell at my right side as my right hand, as an eternal witness to the restoring testimony. That would be Elia qualifies clearly. And he says, I will place your enemies and those who discount you as your footstool. Now, Yahweh elsewhere speaks of making his Dode's enemy a footstool. But the guy who really had religious enemies and who took them on and killed them all, actually, at the end, is Elia. And Elia is the master of ceremony over the sacrifice of the Adam of Perah.
Yes.
And so wouldn't it be, and Yahweh loves to share credit, wouldn't it be lovely if Elia is, just as he performed so magnificently 40 Obel, 888 years prior to this, in his showdown with the religious and political establishment, if now he is presented as the upright one who is an eternal witness of the restoring testimony, and that those who have criticized him, and he will have lots of critics, that they become a footstool for his feet. And that means that same footstool will be the footstool that Dode will use, because Elia, he's not the kind of guy to sit around.
No. He's happy in the mountains in a cave. He doesn't like
he's a recluse. He is kind of like God. He's an introvert. My wife's an introvert. I know all about introverts. So no, he's going to give Dode the footstool.
Wow.
So I will place your enemies as a stool for your feet. 1:10:1. So this was written by a prophet, perhaps the aforementioned Nathan, to reveal what Yahweh said to him regarding this individual, whom the prophet calls either Adonai, which would be my Lord, or Edonai, my upright one. And in this particular case, both work, because Edom is actually an appropriate term for Nathan, who served the king, to use. Even recognizing that back in the day, if you were serving a king, we would use the term sir. People now use your majesty, that sort of thing. Well, Edom was a term that was very common, applied by a man to somebody that man either worked for or thought was somehow distinguished. And so it is very appropriate for Nathan to refer to Dode as my Lord. And it would be even appropriate for Yahweh to acknowledge that while he loved Nathan and spoke through Nathan on other occasions, that Nathan would refer to Dode as king, as my Lord. And therefore, the footstool belongs directly to Dode, not indirectly to Dode.
Gotcha.
So if it is upright one as the eternal witness, then it is to Elia, who's earned the accolade from Yahweh. And if it is to be transliterated Adon as opposed to Edon, then my Lord is Dode. Either way. And by the way, and the reason you would come to the Adon being Dode is who is the Mizmor written about. So he's the only person identified. Therefore, it would be, it would be of Dode. All right, so this means that the writer knows and respects the person that Yahweh is speaking about. However, not only would it be inappropriate to call Yahweh my Lord, this is not Yahweh speaking at this point. We know this because to be the case because there is no situation where God would refer to anyone as my Lord. So this can't actually be God speaking, because God could not say my Lord to anybody. Who would God honor with the title of my Lord?
Yeah, no.
So Yahweh prophetically announced in advance of it occurring concerning the approach of my Lord and my upright one. So this is him, Nathan, in all likelihood, just telling us that Yahweh made an announcement concerning Dode. Because Yahweh, it can't be in Yahweh's voice where Yahweh would say, my Lord. So that means that the prophet is Nathan, and Nathan is reporting like he did in 2 Samuel 7. This is what Yahweh told me to tell Dode. And that is the most reasonable explanation. So I will place your enemies as a footstool. So there we have a perfectly good explanation. So while there would have been no circumstance, of course, where this can be Dode speaking, and there can be no circumstance where this is Yahweh speaking, and therefore Gospel Jesus is a errant substitution either way. He can't be my anything. Even beyond these realizations, we should also acknowledge that all but one word of what follows pertains to Dode, and nothing of it is applicable to the mythical Gospel Jesus. So here it reads, a psalm about and concerning to Dode. Beside you and on your behalf, the Zeroah, protective shepherd and sacrificial lamb, the one who cultivates the harvest with tremendous power, courage, character, and some ability, will be your strong hand at your right side as your right hand. So here we go. Beside you and on your behalf. So this, again, would be someone speaking to Yahweh in all likelihood, because if it's Yahweh speaking, then he's speaking of Dode as the Zeroah. Or more likely, if he's speaking of Dode, it would be he's telling Dode that you're going to have a Zeroah that's going to herald who you are. It's going to cultivate the harvest and the conditions such that it's ripe for you to return. Either way, with tremendous power, character, courage, it's Geburah, one of the 7 spirits that imbues the Choder, is the spirit of Geburah. And he's going to be your strong hand raised up high at your right side. So this could very well be Yahweh speaking now to Nathan about Dode and telling Dode, as the Zeroah, you're going to have a Zeroah, which is exactly what has transpired. So, yeah. Therefore, to pretend, though, that the 110th Mizmor that David is the one speaking rather than Yahweh, or that Dode is addressing an undisclosed Lord, well, of course, that's ludicrous. Peter's alleged citation not only borders on illiterate, it would also have Dode buried rather than in heaven as a preamble. So I don't know how Dode can make these claims if he's dead and buried and he not descended to heaven. But nonetheless, that's this game that they're playing. And then in contradiction of all of this, Dode is supposed to be playing the role of God such that the Lord sits at his right side as he makes a footstool of the Lord's enemies. Highly confusing. And actually, when you know who the players are, the 110th makes a great deal of sense. It's insightful, but you've got to know who the players are. Mm-hmm. Now, recognizing that Dode reconstituted Bashar, corporeal body, and Nefesh, consciousness, were deployed to enable the promises associated with Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, the whole Christian premise unravels. It would have Yahweh predicting that his soul descended independently of himself to live at his right side, which of course makes no sense. But even if it were possible, there would be no reason to predict such a thing. And of course, it still wouldn't be applicable to Jesus. So while God has free will, Yahweh is speaking of another, not himself. And the one person who has made it abundantly clear that he has chosen to live with Yahweh as his right hand is Dode, and not so coincidentally, the Mizmor is about him. And he is, of course, the person referred to as Yahweh's right hand by Yahweh himself. So I think Yahweh should probably know who's his right hand. Gospel Jesus, however, did not leave us with a single written word, and Dode was the most prolific writer among Yahweh's prophets. Dode exemplifies an everlasting and eternal witness, but Gospel Jesus, not so much. Even in the myths attributable to the counterfeit, Gospel Jesus was never oyab, discounted by those who were opposed to his position, but instead quite the opposite. I mean, you took a crude counterfeit and a complete misnomer who never existed, and he is worshipped as a god by 3 billion people. Mm-hmm. What part of discounted is that? Man, I'd like you to discount my bank account if that's the case.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, boy. Please.
By contrast, Dode's Psalms are replete with references to his enemies who have sought to negate his position with Yahweh, and over the last 2,000 years, all of mankind has done that very thing.
No joke, yeah.
So Dode is the only one being discredited by those besmirching him and ascribing undue status to the Christian counterfeit. Moreover, to claim that Dode is not in heaven is counter to everything that is written about him and by him. And of course, it would just negate everything that's the covenant and negate the whole concept of salvation. It wouldn't even be feasible. So this passage in Acts 2 is one of many, which points directly towards what Christians have done to rob Dode of his position with God. It's thievery. So even at this early point, we know that this was not something being said by Dode or about Gospel Jesus, but said about Dode. So it wasn't said by Dode or about Gospel Jesus. It was said about the Messiah and Son of God, Dode, thus negating Peter's statement and Luke's assessment on behalf of Paul. And there's no way around that. It's dunderhead obvious. So you're back, Kirk, to what in the hell have the scholars been doing all of these years?
Well, it's just the difference in what you do and all those guys with all those books, and I used to have them all. It's nothing like this. I mean, and it's all fair. You can understand it. You can check it. You can go to all the. I'm still stunned to be able to read it. I mean, I'm not just patting you on the back. I'm just going, my gosh.
Yeah. How could you make this many mistakes? When we compare Luke's positioning of this prophetic declaration with Yahweh's presentation of it, an observant and rational reader immediately recognizes that the misquoted statement provides no evidence to demonstrate any of Luke's assertions. Not one. While it contains considerable proof to discredit them. And that's been true with every citation. And that's true of every citation by Paul throughout his 14 letters. Well, his rendition shares some words in common to fool the unwary. The psalm does not infer that David did not ascend to heaven. The prophecy is about Dode, so he is not the one who said what follows, negating the somewhat clever repositioning. The Greek citation replaced Yahweh's name with Kyrios, Lord, giving the false impression that there were two lords. And the passage with one referring to Jesus Christ. However, counter to Peter's claim, nothing in the prophecy applies to anyone other than the man to whom it was addressed. Dode. Now, before we move on, let's compare God's word to man's New Testament drivel. A psalm about and to Dode, the beloved. Yahweh prophetically announces, in advance of it occurring, concerning the approach of my Lord and upright one. You have chosen of your own accord to actually dwell at my right side as an eternal witness. I will place your enemies and those who discount you as your footstool. Psalm 110:1 verses. For DD did not ascend to heaven, but himself said, Lord, my Lord, sits and resides out of my right side until I put your enemies as a footstool for your feet. Well, you got the footstool and your feet, right? So how bad can it be?
Sounds like Grok did that, huh?
I think that might have been a Grok move. Grok is the AI for who are curious. Yes. Now, if I may state the obvious, not only is Acts 2:34 and 2:35 essentially incomprehensible and inexcusable, it has no bearing on what is conveyed in Psalm 110:1, making it a complete embarrassment to Christendom. The only thing that is similar is the reference to the footstool, and footstools typically don't designate somebody as being a god. Listen, I've got a half a dozen of them.
I know. I bet you got more than that. This is starting to sound like the Quran. This is so dumb.
It is. Yeah. Well, that might be a little bit much. The Quran is.
Yeah. Okay.
Is special kind of dumb.
That's
Sorry,
dumb.
Grok. I didn't mean to yank your chain there. When it comes to stupidity, sorry, no reference to you, Grok. We're cool now.
They're dead.
Luke and Peter have set a new standard for stupid. And that's really the kindest interpretation that can be made of this drivel, because the most accurate assessment would entail acknowledging that they were actually evil in their intent. Now, to hold this up as evidence, hey, swear to God, yeah, it was not like this. It was like this. I swear. I swear. I didn't do the salute. To hold this up as evidence, put your hand on a Bible, prophetically demonstrating that I assumed Jesus was divine and that he superseded Dode, is pathetic to the point of utter desperation. And to believe that this verbal diarrhea was inspired by Theos on behalf of Jesus requires a complete suspension of reason. So,
And they do.
we're back to the same question again.
Oh,
How
wow.
is it that over the past 1700 years, not a single religious scholar has denounced this obvious deception, while countless have opined that this section of Acts validates their Trinity. I didn't, I've read the Shema Israel. I have never heard anybody translate Echad, and it is, listen, Israel, Yahweh is your God, Yahweh is three.
Mm.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it written that way.
No.
Or for the our former group, Yahweh is two.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think, when it comes to gods, and I would ascribe my recommendation on this to wives as well. One is wonderful. Two not so good. So, is the Christian religion universally effective at incapacitating ever believers' ability to think, or are the clerics and theologians all in on the scam? I wonder which one of those true is true. I came to the conclusion within the first 2 years that I began to write about what's wrong with religion. And my conclusion was that religion is very good at causing believers to disregard evidence and reason, such that no amount of evidence or logic would ever persuade a religious person to believe otherwise. And that no matter what comes at them, they will always find a way to discredit the messenger who points out that their religion is fraudulent. And so you can never reason with them. And that being the case, that's how the Christian theologians have managed to parrot lies that are obvious, is that they're just impervious to evidence or reason. We're doing something they never would have considered. So, and the other thing is that I've noticed about religions is that the very words of God mean nothing to them. Matter of fact, they aggravate them. So if we were to demonstrate, as we have done, that the actual words that God inspired are counter to the religion, all it does is piss them off.
Yeah, they're really good about, even I won't make fun of your imaginary God if you don't make fun of my imaginary God. There's this detente. You have the Pope meeting with these imams and stuff, that these are two separate, and yet, hey, we can all get along and we all believe in the same. They're keeping the scam up together.
Correct. They all want because the scam is very profitable for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, a lot of mega pastors making big bucks, and there's nobody that makes more than the rabbis. The rabbis are really good at it.
Yeah.
So they're all about we have Abrahamic religions.
Well,
I didn't know Abraham had a religion, but I would guess maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck.
Well, what if your populace is like this, that can be so dummied down? What do you do in a courtroom when they're providing you with evidence? It's the same group that goes on the jury. I mean,
do you think there's ever been a debate on the viability of Christianity that took place in a courtroom where the rules of law, or took place as a formal debate where the participants and the audience both knew the rules of debate, ever took place?
No, obviously not.
No.
But
religion is imposed. It is imposed. It is. People don't choose to be religious based upon evidence and reason.
You just got to feel it.
Most are religious because
family, like y'all would say, generation after generation.
And in the case of Islam, they're either born into the religion or they chose to be religious versus losing their head. And in Christianity, for almost all of its existence, you were either a Christian or you lost your head.
That's true.
the Inquisitions and these sorts of things were all designed to the witch trials, the like heretics, were all designed to impose fear. It's why religions have always had human sacrifice. You don't go along with the scam and pretend you really love it, or you'll be the next to have your heart ripped out. That tends to be a motive for a lot of people. So I think that's part of it. I've never heard a person make a logical argument that I chose to be a Christian because the Christian
but it's so
was
strong,
so historically accurate, and because it was so powerfully proven to be true by its citations found in the Torah and prophets. Because essentially, the Christian New Testament is conceived and written, inspired by Paul, and Paul's argument was the God of the Old Testament is feeble. He can't remember the names of anybody. He was also incompetent. Therefore, he could not save anyone. And so he came to me, even though I'm a moral retard and demon possessed. And he decided that since he couldn't save anybody, he said, why don't you go ahead and contradict everything I've said? And you can be the one who is the messenger to the world to save the world on the gospel of grace. This is the Christian proposition. And oh, by the way, to validate your religion, I want you to take everything I have promised to my people and to my son and counterfeit it and apply it to someone else. Mm-hmm. And then just for giggles, I want you to condemn my people by claiming my people killed me. The fraudulent repositioning of the 110th Mizmor Psalm to elevate Jesus over Dode is something those who love Yahweh must overcome with evidence and reason and mockery, so that those who are among the chosen people, Yisrael, can see the truth for the first time. So this begs the question, why are we the first to point out these obvious mistakes? Not mistakes, purposeful fraud. Yeah. Over the past 2,000 years, there have been plenty of Jews who could read Hebrew and Greek and make the same comparisons. Why didn't they? Moreover, they should have. I know why the rabbis didn't. Do you know why the rabbis didn't make the comparison between what is said in the Christian New Testament and what is actually said in the prophets and the Psalms? Why didn't the Jews do it?
They'd have to use the Torah, but they don't want them to use the Torah. They want them to use the Talmud so they can keep their gig going.
Yeah, that's part of it, but not really the answer. No? Kevin, you got an answer?
I don't know.
Okay. The reason that the rabbis never bothered to do what I did is that when you do what I did and you compare the claims, the prophecies that were made about Dode, and you say this is what God actually said about his son Dode, and it's not what the Christian New Testament conveys, then you have a real problem for Rabbinic Judaism, which is then you're left with the Word of God speaking about Dode being the Messiah, the Son of God, and the one who fulfilled all of these things. If God is actually saying, Dode's my guy, Dode's my son, Dode is the one who is the Savior, and that is what is being corrupted to create the myth of Jesus, what are you left with?
You're out of a job.
Dode is the Messiah.
He's the king. Yeah.
And that's devastating to Rabbinic Judaism.
Because they're still waiting on theirs. Oh, any day. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, any day. And they're particularly happy to have Dode dead and buried. And I stopped watching that series House of David because it is David as interpreted by the rabbis. You know, he is as the rabbis see him.
Mm-hmm. A shame.
So, should they have been motivated to do so, then they should have been, because as a result of this religion that, by the way, a rabbi created, Paul was a rabbi, Jews have been dehumanized, they have been demonized, they've been subjugated, they've been plundered by the very religion based on these lies, which were easy to disprove, but you got a real serious problem because the father of rabbinic Judaism is this fellow named Rabbi Akiba. What distinguished Rabbi Akiba? The false Messiah Bar Kokhba.
Bar Kokhba, yeah.
And so if you're saying, wait a minute, if he substituted the false Messiah Bar Kokhba because he didn't recognize the real Messiah Dode, and he's the father of rabbinic Judaism, we need to throw all of it away. And that means our entire culture and everything we've been led to believe is a lie. And our forefathers, not one of them bothered to tell us so. Mm-hmm. Devastating to the Jewish people. So, fellows, maybe that's a good place for us to stop, because I really want Israel to think about what they have done to contribute to this mess. They trained Paul, who was the one who set this whole thing up, to falsify a Messiah and Son of God who would rob the actual Messiah and Son of God of everything, including his people, of salvation. They're wholly responsible for teaching Paul to be able to do this kind of dirty work, which is very similar to what you read in the Talmud. Paul's writings are very similar to Talmud writings. And so they're responsible for Christianity that's subjugated and harassed them for 1600 years, created the culture of the diaspora. Rabbis are also wholly responsible for, not wholly responsible, mostly responsible for Islam. Islam died as a religion in Kabbaville and only became a religion as a result of rabbis selling Muhammad Talmud recitals, of which all of the stories of Abraham and Noah and Adam and David and Solomon and the like came from readings from the Talmud. Without the Talmud stories, Islam would have been nothing but a criminal enterprise, and you would have known nothing of Muhammad other than he was a sand pirate that was a shadow character compared to Genghis Khan or Kublai Khan. Otherwise, you would know nothing of them. Rabbis are the one that's made the difference so that the Quran appeared to be a religious text, written about the same level as we were reading here. And of course, rabbis created rabbinical Judaism based upon foisting a false Messiah on their people, Bar Kokhba. Even the star that they parade around under now comes from Bar Kokhba, son of a star. And they ushered in the wrath of Rome, the diaspora, leading to the Holocaust, and that's the father of rabbinic Judaism. That also comes by way of the rabbis. So somewhere along the way, Yehudim need to realize that the greatest enemy of the Jewish people is the Jewish people. And that the rabbis have done more harm to them than anyone else. And of course, they're in this terrible fix right now where they're going back after Hamas and Gaza. And I keep writing on X, not that you're ever going to splash out of the fishbowl, the goldfish bowl, but that why would you do that? Because you spent a year in Gaza, you broke a lot of buildings, you killed a lot of people, you turned the whole world against you, and there's more Islamic jihadists now than there were when you went in. So if you manufactured more of them than you killed, and you lost a bunch of lives doing it of your own people, and you turned the whole world against you, why would you do more of that and expect a different result? Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
Yes.
And when there is a really good alternative, I wrote the 5-part alternative on 10/7 of 23 and say, do this instead, and you'll have a favorable result. And part of the problem is there's not a single Israelite, not a single Israeli who is willing to acknowledge that their enemy is Islam, and that Islam has been killing them for 1,400 years, or that Islam is the result of rabbis. And not a single Jew is willing to say we need to tear down the Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque because they're a disgrace both to Islam and to us and to Dode and to Yahweh. They're clueless to all of this stuff. So they're lashing out at symptoms. And maybe this is just another example of helping them understand how caustic rabbis have been to the health of Israel and Jews over these years, and that until they separate themselves from religion, they have no hope. I had a poster on X say, you should never say G-D damn. You make a fool of yourself, and God didn't ask you to do anything. G-D didn't ask you to do anything. So I wrote this person back who it would be Jewish, because the only Jews write G-D. And I said that G-D is a religious ritual. It has no basis. If it's going to be pronounced Gad, it happens to be the name of one of the 12 tribes. And the title God is not a name, and God uses that title El to speak of false gods. And the Torah and prophets are filled with the names of false gods, but it is to denounce them. So the whole idea of G-D is just stupid. And what it tells a person is that you have no clue what the name of God actually is, which is Yahweh. And as for God damns, it's a sentence.
Yeah, separate.
God condemns, and in this case, God condemns, separates himself from, and condemns religion. Something that you really should become aware of. And because you don't have any idea that God's name is Yahweh, my guess is you have no idea what he said. But if you want to out the fool, here's a link to 13 books that I wrote about goddamn religion, and here's another link to the 20 some odd that I wrote to introduce you to God. I would be happy to have you be the first to find the fool in these books. Have at it. And he said, thanks, but no thanks.
Really? God.
Yeah, X is quite an experience. The Grok maintains the throttle on X. He determines who sees your posts, and so if you get into the Grok
timeout room,
timeout room, you're in serious trouble. Which really doesn't bother me much, because what we have found, and for example, I'm streaming this program. I'm looking at you fellows from Facebook. And that is because Facebook has really turned out to be a lovely online home for us. It is a wonderful narrative, wonderful interaction, a wonderful blend of both the spoken word and the written word. It's a familial kind of setting. When somebody comes in that's an agitator, you can, and we all do, we try to help them, unless they're just totally caustic. We'll try to 2 or 3 times to help them. They continue just to be a dunderhead. It has just such an easy block feature.
Yeah, found that.
Yeah, I remember this. The last person I had to block happened to be somebody I know, and he happens to be a father of somebody that I genuinely love. And I must have written him 6 times. I say, you're a very nice man. Your son is a man that I respect greatly, one of my longest and dearest friends, and because of my relationship with him, I see your name coming up, promoting all sorts of religious and not religious, political ideas in my feed. I have never responded once. And in the case here, we are trying to poke an argument that is political. You just don't know enough about these subjects, and I'm not going to be rude and try to argue with you here. So all I would do is respectfully, please, you're welcome to stay and learn and listen, but don't make this about your communist religion, our political mantra. And said it much nicer than that, like 6 times. You know, he came back.
What?
Yeah, he came back and was critical again. If I just finally said, okay, I'm not going to, no reason to be nice, block. And that's a beautiful thing about Facebook. It really does give you the ability to have a place where we can have a narrative in the family. We can invite new people in, but we don't have to be aggravated. Like, you spend an hour on X I mean, you just want to spit out nails. I mean, it's just so awful that 90% of the people that you confront are worse than dunderheads. They're promoting just blood libel. It's so bad. So I really have come to appreciate Facebook. It's the one place I didn't think we would work at all because it had such a reputation for thought police. And here we start on it, and the first thing we read is that Mark Zuckerberg says, "I'm firing the thought police."
Funny how that worked out.
How that worked out, and we end up with this beautiful environment.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mark, too.
I'm sure they both had something to do with it.
And I can look at the right side of the screen. We'll work through people. I see the right side of the screen, and a lot of interactive comments, and so this is really a nice environment. And I just one announcement before we leave. My good friend Joe Page, working with Kevin Yu, but I think is going to be primarily working with Rich, who I think has done the most programming apart from Joe. And he's working on a rebranding. It was my wife that decided, okay, spoke to me 3 months ago now about I want the everything rebranded, and we hadn't done it on the website. And she decided, I think we need to take the bull by the horns. And the guys are doing it. We're coming out with the menorah and the rebranded site. And the new site is going to be as integrated with books and audio blog as is possible, and interactive forum. So we're going to make it just an extension of YouTube and Facebook and the library as is possible. And that's what they're working on now. I was I guess one last thought here. Today, as I was thinking about Yahweh telling me to go to the menorah as the symbol, get rid of the lion, go to the menorah as the symbol for our site, but do it with a modern, contemporary adaptation of the menorah that looks right for our time. And I was thinking about, where's the place where they have the longest and most detailed description of the two end days prophets, our witnesses?
Isaiah and Yeshayahu and
no, it'd be Zechariah, the opening chapters of Zechariah. And what are those witnesses equated to? Menorah, aren't they? They're lamps, they're conduits of oil and enlightenment through the menorah. So is it any wonder that Yahweh says, "Get me one of those"? We're going to communicate. Stuff, Yeah, you've been a little slow on the uptake, so I'm going to help you out here. But can you get me one of those? That's
he's good.
He's Yes. Normally I'm slow, but not tragically so.
No, you're ahead of the curve, believe me.
But in a situation like this, I did have to point out. He said, "I think it's time that you realize that as one of the two final witnesses, that is the right symbol.
Right call.
Let's go to the right symbol." And we'll go from there. So anyway, that's what we're up and doing right now. They expect to have something within a week's time that we can begin to use. So I thank them very much for that effort, and thank you guys. It's nice to have the family 2 hour, and we had some fun here and a few laughs. So I think
a lot of laughs.
Always a good time.
This was funny.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Good night.
Night.